Welcome back to Being Bookish. I'm Ray, an unapologetic bookworm, introvert, self-confessed hermit, and long-time depression sufferer. This is my quiet space to share thoughts as I make my way through an ever-growing and pretty much unmanageable to-be-read pile. Join me as I explore the stories on my bookshelf, one book at a time, with 100% honest and completely spoiler-free reviews. This week marked the release of a greatly anticipated romantasy sequel, Fury Bound, so I thought I'd take a look at the first book in the Wolves of Ruin series, Direbound, by author duo Sable Sorenson. Please step into my bookish world and enjoy your stay. Meryn Cooper has never dreamed of being one of the Bonded, the King's elite warriors who form mental links with massive, vicious direwolves. She's made peace with her life scraping by in poverty in the shadows of the castle, but then her younger sister Sailor is kidnapped, stolen across the border by the immortal monsters her country has spent centuries fighting, and Meryn's world falls apart. Desperate to cross the front and save her sister, Meryn enlists in the army, only to discover that there are bonding trials this year where all soldiers are forced to risk their lives in an attempt to connect with a direwolf. It's too late to turn back. Meryn is thrown into the deadly competition against her will. Now she'll need to survive the next 4 months of training at the castle if she wants a chance of finding Sailor. Everything here is a test, from the brutal classes where one mistake means death, to the glittering court parties where every smile hides a knife. To make things worse, Meryn is bound to a feral direwolf who refuses to communicate. The other trainees would love to spill her common blood, and her gorgeous instructor Stark Therion is as malicious as the wolves himself. Everyone is out to get her, everyone but the dangerously handsome crown prince, Killian Valtier, but if she loses her heart to him, she may also lose her life. And the castle is hiding dark secrets. As with every single book review I do, I am going to keep the detailed discussion and my personal opinion about the plot, characters, experiences, and some of the underlying themes to my review section at the end. And I am still going to maintain the whole honest and spoiler-free review plan because I really don't want to ruin everything for you. Meryn Cooper survives by her fists and cunning in the bleak slums of Sturmfrost in the shadows of the castle. She spends her nights fighting in illegal pits, enduring blood and bruises to pay for her mother's medicine and to protect her younger sister Sailor. Children are being snatched from their homes off the street, never to be seen again, and people are terrified that their child will be next. They're being taken by the mysterious, invisible nabbers, horrid monsters of the night. Meryn's world is one of constant poverty and the looming threat of loss, where her only rare comfort is her lover, Lee. But when the shadows suddenly take Sailor, Meryn's world fractures. The promise she made to keep her sister safe becomes a desperate driving vow that thrusts her into a journey meant to test every single boundary. Driven by the desperate need to save Sailor, Meryn makes the ultimate sacrifice and decides to enter the king's service. Sure, this is the only way she will be able to rescue her sister and the other children from her town who have been kidnapped by the nabbers. She has no desire for the glory of the elite. She simply wants to be a blade in the dark. However, fate has a different path in mind. Against her will and her every instinct, she's thrust into terror that is the bonding trials. These trials are a brutal ancient rite where only the strongest survive to bond with the legendary direwolves. Meryn is a deeply reluctant participant, resentful of a destiny she didn't choose and a power she never sought. She views the entire process as a distraction from finding her sister, and her lack of desire for a wolf sets her apart from the ambitious highborn candidates who have spent their entire lives preparing for exactly this moment. The bonding trials are a passage into a world that's as alluring as it is cruel. The direwolves are not mere animals, but enigmatic sentient beings whose choices shape the very destinies of the kingdom, though this is not apparent to Meryn or others who have grown up as commoners in the town. These trials are designed to cull the weak and elevate the worthy through a series of deadly tests. As an anomaly among the elite, Meryn's every move is scrutinised. She's forced to navigate a landscape where she's the only one who doesn't want to be there, making her presence a silent rebellion against the very foundations that the king's power have been based on. She faces constant hostility from those who believe her common blood defiles the sacred tradition, yet she holds her ground with the grit of the street fighter she was forced to become. The ascent up Mount Wolfsbane serves as the ultimate challenge for the candidates. Hundreds begin the treacherous climb, but only a handful will ever reach the summit and gain the opportunity to bond with a direbound wolf. It's on these frozen, unforgiving slopes that Meryn's isolation is finally breached. She encounters twin sisters Isabel and Venna, who are struggling against the mountain's perils despite personal preparation. Both are determined to succeed so they can stay together and honour their family traditions. Though Meryn is used to relying only on herself, the sheer brutality of the climb forces a shift in her perspective. She doesn't just face the mountain's natural dangers, but also the calculated violence of her peers, who see the climb as the perfect opportunity to eliminate any and all competition. As legacy candidates, they have been training for this for most of their lives, aware of the perils that await them, and they don't want to disappoint their families. Somehow, Meryn finds herself acting as a reluctant anchor for the twins. Her protective instincts for Sailor bleed through into her interactions with these two young girls. By the time they reach the summit, the bond between the trio is forged in shared trauma and survival. At the peak, the direwolves await to choose their riders. An unwilling participant, Meryn does not expect or want to create a bond with any of the wolves, so she is frustrated and angry when Anassa, a silver direwolf of immense and ancient power, chooses her. Due to her reluctance, the bond lacked the immediate connection or shared purpose that the others experience. Instead, it's a slow and arduous process, building trust where neither party is particularly willing. Anassa, due to the fact that she feels she has been rejected by Meryn, and Meryn because she didn't want this in the first place. Meryn resents being chosen for a life she never wanted, and Anassa continues to remain distant and inscrutable. Their connection is raw and marked by deep-seated mistrust. While other candidates are celebrating their matches, Meryn and Anassa fight a cold battle for understanding that takes weeks of painful effort to even start to bridge. Within the training grounds, Meryn encounters Stark Therian, the alpha of the Deimos pack. Far from a friendly alliance, their initial meeting is defined by a sharp and jagged tension. Meryn views Stark with immediate suspicion, seeing him as just another element in a dangerous environment designed to kill her. Stark is brooding and guarded, his motives hidden behind a wall of silence that Meryn has absolutely no interest at all in breaking. They clash in the dirt and the blood of the arena, their interactions bristling with mutual wariness. Meryn is convinced that everyone in the trials is a potential threat to her mission to find her sister, and Stark, with his formidable skill and shadowed past, is the most dangerous of them all. This wall of distrust is high and thick and will take a miracle to overcome. It's built from both the scars that they both carry because of their pasts and secrets they are both holding within themselves they don't want to reveal. As the trials progress, Meryn's circle expands to include Thomasin, who is incredibly attracted to Isabel, and Henry. Meryn and Henry have a bond. They are linked by a unique status. Two commoners who have successfully forged a bond with a direwolf. For Henry, this is the fulfillment of absolutely everything he has ever wanted, a chance to escape his past and prove his worth. This shared experience creates a bridge between them that the Highborn are unable to breach. Joining them is Neva, a grieving Strategos Bond who lost her partner during the brutal ascent. Neva is a ghost in the group, resisting any attempt initially at connection as she drowns in her own isolation. It's only when her new packmates step up to defend her during a particularly savage element of the trial that she slowly begins to warm to them and reveal elements of her own feeling. She slowly starts to build a bond with her fellow riders and becomes a fierce and sardonic warrior and a pillar for the group. During the grueling combat, Merrin starts to sense something deeply wrong. A dark frequency humming beneath the stones of the arena. This sensory awakening coincides with a discovery that absolutely shatters Merrin's world. The man she knew as Lee, her lover from the slums, the man who supported her after every fight, is revealed to be Crown Prince Killian, the son of King Cyril. The initial shock is a cocktail of anger and betrayal. How could this person she trusted most in the world be the face of the system she despises and is fighting against? Killian is a master of persuasion, however. He woos her with a desperate intensity, pleading his deception was necessary to protect her from everything in his life. He paints a vision of their future together, where she is no longer a pawn, but a strong warrior standing by his side as a queen, capable of changing the laws that keep her people poor, that don't protect her family. Despite her instincts, Merrin is still in love with Lee, Killian, whoever he happens to be, and she allows herself to be persuaded into still having him in her bed, accepting an engagement that feels like both a promise and a potential shackle. The trials demand more than skill, they demand blood. In a display of the king's cruelty, the candidates are forced to cull their own in matches designed to break their spirits. The loss of Henry and a heart-wrenching betrayal that takes place within the trials shatter any lingering innocence within the bonded pack. Merrin sees the king's true face. He doesn't want warriors, he wants monsters who have sacrificed their humanity to fight for him and his beliefs. Driven by grief and her strategic mind, and following the death of their alpha on the front line, Merrin is named the new alpha of Strategos, despite her lack of experience and knowledge. It's a title that carries the weight of leadership that she never asked for. She didn't want to be there in the first place, and she must now wield this to keep her remaining friends alive against the mounting threats within their own ranks. Before the final trial begins, Merrin's search for the truth, aided by Venna, who is an astute spy, leads her into the dark, forgotten depths beneath the castle. In the cold shadows under the very arena where they bleed for the king's entertainment, she uncovers the horrifying reality of the Nabbers. The missing children, including her own sister Sailor, haven't been taken by monsters from stories, but are being held captive as part of a much darker systemic nightmare. This discovery strips away any remaining illusions of the king's morality and reveals the true rotting heart of Sturmfrost. The children are pawns in a ritual of power, and Merrin's fury becomes a cold, focused blade. The Unity trial stands as the final test, but for Merrin and her pack, it's the start of an uprising. Armed with the knowledge of the children below, she leads her pack in an open rebellion during the final combat. The arena transforms into a stage for revolution as Merrin faces the king, striking the blow that will finally end his reign. But even as the king falls, the web of manipulation draws ever tighter. Killian's presence by her side is no longer a comfort, but a source of growing dread. All is not as it appears to be. Merrin is being wrapped in a cobweb of elaborate lies as the ultimate betrayal is revealed. And it is time for your regular Being Bookish public service announcement. Read what you want. Pick up any book that sparks joy or takes your fancy. Reading should be fun, not a chore. DNF when you want to. Read what you love, and above everything else, this is not a competition. Whether you read 5 books a year or 500, as long as you enjoy what you've read, that's all that truly counts. This is not a call to action. If this genre is not yours, don't force yourself to read it. Anyway, less of that. Let's see what others thought about Diabound before I get to my personal feelings on the book. I don't think that Neo has a single positive thing to say about Diabound in her 1-star review. She said, "Wow. Just wow. I never knew books could genuinely get this bad. First of all, how is this not illegal? This is more than reheating Rebecca Yaros's Naturals. This is like Fourth Wing from Sheen, but replace the dragons with wolves. You guys need to stop lying with all these paid 5-star reviews. I'm so angry I wasted so many hours reading this. Let's not even get started on the insufferable, strong female character, because at this point it's a requirement in all fantasy nowadays. The first 85% is horrific, littered with grammatical errors, cringe sentences. The female character says, 'I'm cooked,' glaringly obvious red flags and stolen plot lines. Imagine a mixture of every popular fantasy trope and books thrown together in a rusty witch's cauldron. Who did this to you? Touch her and you'll die. One bed trope, glaringly obvious soon-to-be betrayals. Carissa Broadbent, you will pay for your crimes. Strong female leads who actually just rude and arrogant without any skill to back it up. A Mary Sue, the writer just gives her every fantasy main character label. Princess, queen, alpha, bonded, mated. Like literally what isn't she? The Serpent and the Wings of Night isn't a good enough book for so many authors to be stealing its plot lines like this. The last bit of the book isn't that bad, though, so it gets 1 star. It unravels nicely and appeals a lot to the side of my brain which reads fantasy for all its mystery and intrigue." And wow, that's a rather angry review. I do enjoy reading the 1-star reviews, to be honest. Sometimes they are quite entertaining, this one was, and sometimes they actually bring up relevant points that were niggling at me when I was writing my own review. This particular review has no real feedback to offer about the writing or the story. However, there are others that do sift through the plot, analysing every element before coming to a conclusion. Of course, many of those include spoilers, and they are incredibly long, so I had to skip over them. I am actually going to go over a few of Nio's bullet points in my own review, so please do make sure to stay for the rest of the journey. The overall rating for Diabound is somewhat similar across Goodreads and Storygraph and other platforms, to be fair. This was the second huge release from Wayward after its launch in the UK, and due to the inclusion of supernatural mythological creatures in the form of the direwolves, it seems as though it filled the gap many romantasy fans have had while waiting for the next book in ACOTAR or Fourth Wing. They are both writing, and we have release dates for some books, so we do know that there are books coming. On Goodreads, it's earned a 4.33 overall rating, and on Storygraph, it's at 4.28. Though not as high as some of the other popular books in this genre, it is still pretty impressive for a debut. Right now, the book has 173,492 ratings and 27,438 full reviews on Goodreads. And I had to say that slowly because I didn't want to get the numbers wrong. And on Storygraph, it has 17,493 ratings and 3,770 full reviews. 51% of Goodreads reviewers actually gave the book a 5-star rating, though I wonder how that ratio would shift if people were able to use half and quarter-star ratings on the platform. I know personally that's something I really would love them to add. There are some books that are good, but not quite 5-star worthy, and I am making a great deal of use of the quarter ratings that you get on Storygraph, Fable, and Pagebound. I use way too many trackers for my reviews, I think. SK posted her initial review as a bookmark when the book was announced, changing it when she added her full feedback following the release. In her 5-star review, she said, "Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. I'm beyond surprised by how a predictable book and plot twists that I was guessing on point still managed to completely reel me in, and at the end blew me away. And yes, it does read like it was inspired by a lot of popular romantasy books, but in my opinion, at the end of the day, it manages to stand on its own. Like, talk about a masterful execution. It has action, it has romance, spice and angst, betrayals, trials and training scenes, but mostly it has an actual plot that is too immersive for its own good. I was hooked from chapter 1 to the end. All I wanted was to devour it and it never end. The writing and world building are pretty simplistic to understand, and it starts to expand as the book progresses, especially adding more layers and depths. The direwolves and the Siphons are an interesting addition. Merrin is fierce. She has her moments of loyalty that bite her back, but it shows a rare side of vulnerability and realism. She's a mix between Paydin and Violet. I just know she's going to get even better, especially opening up with Anassa. That's something I look forward to exploring. Stark is someone I loved at first glance, and the way I just knew he's a secret, jealous alpha who is going to have me swooning, falling, gasping, and yearning in the next one. I'm already there, though. I call dibs. My man. I would like to picture him as if Robb Stark from Game of Thrones, but only darker and more fierce. Lee. I knew from the moment he was introduced. I've read too much romantasy to see right through it, but oh my gosh, the mouth on the man and that spice. The authors did a really good job at his character arc and the way he is written. I cannot deny that. The romance is far more complex than a simple enemies to lovers, but the slow burn and the banter was all so good and had me grasping for crumbs. The spice is deliciously written, but it's those moments of tender and air-cracking tension that was making it even better and more intense. I cannot wait to see the fated mates trope play out in more depth in the next book. The last 150 pages were an experience, though. I loved it. I sort of already have an idea of how the next book is going to play out with that splendid ending. It's easy to predict, but I hope it's still as immersive as this one. It's worth a read, especially if you're looking for something fast-paced and an easier sort of fantasy to dive into. Believe it or not, this was actually one of the shorter 5-star reviews across the sites that didn't include massive spoilers. I have had to temper the language though, because the enthusiasm is 100% there in this one, and expressed sometimes quite explicitly. I always find that the 5-star and 1-star reviews have elements of my personal thoughts in them, even if I'm absolutely loving a book, because I am not completely oblivious to their faults. It's so hard to find a book that truly sinks into my being, and sometimes I do love them too much to do more than repeatedly recommend them. Speaking of, The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson is now available in paperback. Right, now that I've mentioned what others are saying, here's what I really think about Direbound by Sable Sorenson. No spoilers, just 100% honest. Did I like the book? I actually did enjoy the book. In fact, on Goodreads I gave it 5 stars, mostly really because of the whole lacking more subjective ratings options. And I gave it 4.75 stars on Storygraph, though I'm still contemplating that, having just finished a reread. I have now read the book twice. I wanted to be able to pick up Furybound when it was released and know that I remembered the twists and turns that all took place in the last 100 pages or so. This seems to be a pattern in more recent novels, if I'm being fair. I do wish that twists and foreshadowing were included more subtly and carefully earlier on rather than all crammed into the end of the book, which was an issue that I found with the book I reviewed in my last episode, The Ending Writes Itself. Everything was crammed in right at the very end, so the first part of the book may as well have not existed. Despite this, I can still acknowledge that there are issues with the story itself and the characters, though perhaps the largest issue is with the book's categorisation and how it relates to the story being told. Romantasy is a popular hybrid genre blending romance and fantasy, commonly defined as high-stakes, magical, or world-building stories where a central love story is crucial to the plot. It often features spicy scenes, complex characters, and is frequently driven by relationships in a fantasy setting. I know that there will be people out there who disagree with me quite avidly when it comes to this being one of the hills I'm not quite willing to die on, but I am going to say is one of my biggest issues with this book. I don't think that Diabound could be really classified as a romantasy novel. I would say it is fantasy 100%. However, the romantasy element is not there. We have, yes, a relationship between Meryn and Lee, later to be discovered as Prince Killian, and it seems as though this is going to be the direction the story takes. They are in a relationship. They have been together for a considerable period of time at the point that the book begins. And there are definitely spicy moments between them that are at some points rather explicit, and they are well written, to be fair. However, due to the nature of their relationship and the fact that this, we know from relatively the start, is not going to be endgame. There may have been suspicions when I first started reading that I thought it might be, but then the twists occurred and I knew, yeah, this isn't the direction that we're going in. I don't think that their relationship is central. Let me rewind that. Their relationship is central to the book. However, their relationship is not a romance. Their relationship is complex. It is manipulation rather than a relationship. He's gaslighting her beyond a shadow of a doubt. There are red flags waving, flipping everywhere when it comes to the relationship that Meryn and Lee / Killian actually have. This is not a romance. It is, in some ways, abusive, but we don't see all of the abuse, if that makes any sense to anyone. So my issue with this is not there is romance in this book and it's a romantasy. It's that the romance isn't central to the novel. The romance between Meryn and Lee is not central to the book at all. The disaster that is the manipulation that Killian persuades her into as